Hello everyone, Ted Laxton, the Country Thinker here with my very first video blog post. This post is a response to a video recently released by Julie Borowski. Now I have tremendous respect for Julie Borowski. She's bright and most of all, she's a fellow libertarian. Her video asked the basic question, should Ron Paul supporters and libertarians remain in the Republican Party? After the Republican Party National Convention, with the mistreatment of Ron Paul supporters, many of his supporters are thinking about going the third party route and leaving the party entirely. Now, I want to begin with two incorrect assertions in Ms. Borowski's video. I do not impute any ill will to her, I just think she's incorrect. The first is the incorrect assumption that libertarians belong in the Republican Party in the first place. I have many libertarian friends who are either in the Democratic Party or have left the Democratic Party, and if the Libertarian Party went away, they would go back. Indeed, in working on Governor Gary Johnson's presidential campaign, I am persuading more Democrats to vote Libertarian than Republican. So I think it's a false assumption to say that libertarians belong in the Republican Party and should take over the Republican Party, because frankly, once I get done here, you'll see the Republican Party is going to be very difficult to take over, and frankly the Democratic Party is not as bad. So if you're going to go a major party route, I would urge libertarians to try and take over the Democratic Party because they're much more receptive to the rank and file. Now the second false assertion, or incorrect assertion, is probably the softest way to put it, is that there have been no attacks on Libertarian Party candidates. Therefore, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are not taking libertarians seriously and are not scared by the Libertarian Party. Wrong. I'm working on Governor Johnson's campaign, and let me tell you, they are scared out of their wits. Two ways, and these are just examples, in which the Republican establishment and the political establishment in general is attacking Governor Johnson. First, they are fighting him on ballot access everywhere they can. Michigan, Virginia, and a host of other states. And we're not talking about ballot access for the Libertarian Party. They're talking about him, just that one person, being on the ballot in November. They are scared of Governor Johnson. Second, when it comes to polling, and mind you, polling is a key weapon of the Washington establishment. Recently, Scott Rasmussen came out and said, I'm not including Gary Johnson in my polls because he's only polling around 4 to 6%, and that's just not enough to include him. Well, the polls that are including him have him around 6, 7, and sometimes 8%. His numbers are low, which suggests to me that he must be producing his own data and only releasing the ones that show Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. I don't know that for a fact, but it strongly suggests that. Now, the question is, 4 to 6%, that's not enough? How about 2000? I'm certain that Mr. Rasmussen remembers 2000, when Ralph Nader got 3%, which was enough to swing the election from Al Gore to George W. Bush. Now, I'm going to tell you that Gary Johnson is going to decide this election. The party establishments know this, and they are petrified with it. They don't know what to do about it. Now, they certainly don't want to add him in polls, because then people would say, who's this Gary Johnson guy? Then they look him up, next thing you know, they like him, and they vote that way. And certainly you're not going to hear Mitt Romney or Barack Obama mention his name, because then they would be dignifying his candidacy, which is something they do not want to do. And therefore they stay mum, because otherwise the media would have to cover him, and millions of people would try and find out who Gary Johnson is if they don't already know. So, with those issues set aside, let's consider whether or not libertarians should go third party or try to go within one of the two main parties, or actually let's just focus on the one that Ms. Borowski prefers, the Republican Party. Let's begin with one area that we can agree. Doing either one is a daunting task, because the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have put a lot of safeguards in place to ensure that their parties cannot be taken over and that a third party cannot rise. Either way is difficult, but I refuse to say impossible because I'm an American and I know that Americans are exceptional and anything is possible. So let's begin with those two basic agreements. Difficult, but possible. So which way to go? Obviously, I've demonstrated that I'm a third-party guy, and I believe that the more difficult path is to take over the Republican Party. So let's begin with a PowerPoint presentation I put together, which shows how the Republican Party actually operates.
The Republican Party begins here at the top, with billions of dollars of special interest money from the likes of Goldman Sachs, Exxon, and Raytheon. The special interest money, along with a smaller amount from wealthy individual donors, is funneled into the Republican establishment, which is the RNC and the rest of the Republican apparatus. The Republican establishment then distributes the money to federal races and state parties, of course expecting that everyone involved below will do the bidding of those at the top. At the bottom are local candidates, and as you noticed, none of the gravy from above has trickled down to them. Now, Ms. Borowski is excited that there are some libertarians who have won local races, and I hope they serve their constituents well. But these aren't going to be rising stars, because as soon as they get anywhere as close to this flow of money and don't want to do what the establishment from above says, they will be crushed. Now, you may be wondering where Ms. Borowski, and frankly, most of Mitt Romney's supporters are on this chart. As you can see, they're nowhere to be found. The average voter is expected to give a small donation, vote, and then go away. Now, unless libertarians and other liberty-minded individuals are either able to A, get a hold of the money at the top, or B, sever the link between the money and the candidates, you will never take over the Republican Party.
So you can see, the Republican Party is a top-down money laundering scheme, nothing more. The problem with the Republican Party is the Republican Party. Many people say to get elected, you need the apparatus. You need all of the pollsters and everything. You need all of those accoutrements to get elected. But the apparatus is the disease. So a libertarian takeover of the Republican Party will require these three things. One, you must convince left-leaning libertarians more inclined to the Democratic Party to jump on board. Good luck with that. Two, you need to take over the Republican Party from the bottom up. Not likely. And three, when you get there, you need to completely rebuild the party from scratch, from a top-down entity to a grassroots entity. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it'll take decades, when I don't think we have decades to go ahead and go with that kind of political operation. The Libertarian Party, however, is a grassroots-based organization in which local parties are the center of power. That is the libertarian ideal. If libertarians are going to get power and actually exert some influence over politics, I believe it is through the Libertarian Party. Still a difficult task, mind you, still a difficult task. But the structure is right. The structure is right, and the structure is key. Many say that the Libertarian Party ascendancy, it just simply won't happen. Now, it strikes me as ironic whenever that comes from Republicans. Back in the 1850s, the Republican Party overthrew the Whig Party in about 5 years. Mind you, this is a period in which there was no telephone, no telegraph. We're talking the age of the Pony Express. Yet, a third party rose and took the White House in a matter of years. This is not without precedent. Now, what it is going to take for that to happen is for millions of Americans, particularly libertarians such as Julie Borowski, to finally say no mas, to tap into the social media, so on and so forth. We can take over in one election cycle if only enough Americans believe. In conclusion, I think that trying to take over the Republican Party is a foolhardy adventure for libertarians. The other path, the third party path, is difficult and full of potholes. I confess, I've been walking in that road for several years, and the Republicans and Democrats will fight tooth and nail. But I believe the odds are better. And if nothing else, I sleep better at night knowing I'm not involved with a corrupt organization. Thank you. It's been a pleasure with my first blog post. I'm excited to hear what you all think. See ya.